Did Marco Polo go to China? Or was it all a lie? You'll find out at the end of this video. In the 1200s, there was scarcely anything more horrifying than traveling with a lot of money. It would almost certainly get stolen, unless the emperor of the land provided security himself. Marco Polo, the famous explorer, was traveling back home from his travels in service to Kublai Khan, and he was under such protection. Until he received the news, in the middle of his travels, that the emperor was dead. Fear gripped Marco Polo immediately. He was unlucky in that regard, but still lucky to have gained Khan's favor. When he traveled the lands extensively and reached Khan's court, the emperor took an immediate liking to the young man and appointed him in a high administrative position. Polo was well-traveled, well-read, and capable of speaking many languages. Polo was sent on special missions to various places in China, Burma, and India. Eventually, Khan became an old man, and the Polo family became worried about what would happen once he died. How could they ever hope to get home with wealth without the Khan's protection? Of course, Khan was really fond of Polo and enjoyed his company, so naturally he was reluctant to let him go. After pleading, Polo was let go after being in Khan's company for 17 years. Polo got his permission to leave and head back to his home in Venice. But he was assigned one task, escorting the Mongol princess Kokochin to her betrothed Persian prince Argan. They had to journey to Hormuz by sea, which took 2 years and was a horrible, dreadful affair. According to Marco Polo, about 600 passengers and crew had died, but he never mentioned why the death toll was so high. Some common theories include scurvy, pirates, and hostile locals. Another surprise awaited them when they finally reached Persia. Prince Argan had already been dead for 2 years. This presented a problem for the princess, who was counting on marrying someone known as the most handsome of his time, but instead had to marry his son named Ghazan, who was described by Marco Polo as sort of an insignificant in appearance, but definitely a good ruler and administrator. While in Persia, Polo learned that Kublai Khan had died. Still, the people Polo encountered as they traveled through the bandit-ridden area completely honored the golden tablet of protection from Khan had given them before his death. So even though Khan seemed to be powerful enough to give them horses, provisions, and escorts to lead them through the most dangerous routes, they had been given the right to leave when he was still alive. Polo had reached Trebizond, a city on the Black Sea, from which they could finally continue their journey by ship. This stop is still famous today as the stop that Marco Polo graced and serves as a notable stop on the modern Silk Road. From there, Polo chose to take their safer and less exhausting method of traveling by ship to Constantinople. Then he crossed the Mediterranean Sea to Venice, his home, after being away for 24 years and gathering more wealth than imaginable. Of course, these Asian treasures included hordes and hordes of precious metals, including gold and silver, stuff that would serve the Polo dynasty for a long time. But the most interesting thing he brought with him was a bit weird. It was asbestos. That was a bit unique, and they even presented it before the king. And Marco Polo wrote that asbestos cloth was cleaned by throwing it into the fire. This was Europe's first encounter with this strange mineral. Unfortunately, Polo had returned to a very unhappy Venice, a city-state that was caught in a violent war with neighboring Genoa. 3 years after he returned, Marco Polo was captured by Genoese forces as he was commanding a Venetian armed force in the war against their neighbor. When this man was imprisoned in Genoa, he encountered a very peculiar cellmate, a man from Pisa named Rustichello, who was a writer of romance novels. He soon took note of the fabulous stories that Polo seemed to be telling to many people about faraway lands and their customs. Rustichello, being of the literary heart, prompted Polo to dictate his entire story to him so he could pen it down. This was the book for which Marco Polo is famous for. It became an immediate bestseller in Venice and eventually all of Europe. It had a drastic and huge effect on medieval and early modern explorers who wished to follow in the Polo footsteps. The war between Venice and Genoa eventually ended in the summer of 1299, and all of the war prisoners were soon released, including Marco Polo and his cellmate. He returned to Venice, where he married a woman named Donnana Badur and had 3 daughters with her. Surprisingly, Marco Polo never traveled very far again. He remained in Venice until his death in 1324. His last words? I have only told you half of what I saw. Marco Polo's last will and testament was public and shows us that he died a very wealthy man. He was able to leave large portions of wealth to his wife and daughters, and even had precious treasures in his hands, like gold and silks, and even that gold tablet of protection that was given to the Polos by Kublai Khan. Because of these records, it was clear that Marco Polo was as fond as Kublai Khan of him. There is just one problem. Historians wonder if Marco Polo was lying about visiting the court in Beijing because his name was never recorded, even though all the names of visitors were written in customs. Of course, he could have been living under a different name in China, and he did say that he only gave out half of the information that he knew. Still, him not appearing by his own name in these records is a bit strange. If he was actually such a prominent visitor and personal friend to Kublai Khan as he claimed, do you think he really visited China? Let us know in the comments below.